The Denver Nuggets keep getting inconsistency, marked with frustration, confusion, and bewilderment when you look at the Western Conference standings. If the season ended today, the Nuggets would be a play-in tournament team. On their previous game against the Atlanta Hawks, the Denver Nuggets looked like the Denver Nuggets are supposed to look. Forget the result, even though for the struggling Nuggets, the 141-111 win over the Hawks was as refreshing as finding an oasis in the middle of a desert. The Nuggets made 62% of their shots. They moved the ball on offense. They were stingy defensively. They took over the game with one of the best first quarters they've played all season, and they built upon that for the remainder of the game. It was a desperate performance from a ticked-off team that's taken more than its share of lumps this season. But it's not nearly enough to scrub the stink off last game's embarrassment of losing to the lowly Washington Wizards, or getting blown out by a potentially great Cleveland Cavaliers team, or many of the nights where the Nuggets have listlessly run up and down the floor, seemingly without a care in the world. We can ask ourselves a fair question given the results and a scary question given the general talent on the roster. Who are these Denver Nuggets? The eye test is confusing. This Nuggets team hasn't displayed anywhere close to the consistency that we are used to seeing. There is no excuse for the Wizards' loss. Washington was 2-18 before that night. The Wizards were missing major pieces of their starting lineup in Kyle Kuzma and Alex Sarr. The Nuggets needed a win coming off a 12-point loss in Cleveland, so a lack of energy wasn't an excuse, and Jokic turned in perhaps the best single game in the history of Denver's franchise with 56 points, 18 rebounds, and 8 assists. But worse, not only did the Nuggets lose, but they also allowed the Wizards to control the game. This is the same Denver core that won a championship in 2023. This Jokic might the best version of himself, even better than his 3 MVP seasons. And with this version of Jokic, with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon still around him, this team is capable of contending for a championship. To understand the context of what Jokic is doing this season, imagine the best campaigns LeBron James and Steph Curry have ever produced. Then double them. It's not just that Jokic is averaging a triple-double, something James and Curry have never done. It's not just that he's averaging more points than he did in any of the 3 previous seasons in which he won the MVP award, or that he's taking more three-pointers than ever and is making half of them. It's that he's had to do all of this just for the Nuggets to keep their heads above water. To an unprecedented degree in modern NBA history, Jokic essentially functions as Denver's entire offense. With Jokic on the court, the Nuggets score 127.5 points per 100 possessions. When he sits out, they score just 96.5. The gap of 31 points is the largest since they began logging the data in the 2003-04 season, blowing James and Curry's best marks out of the water. It means Jokic essentially turns the worst team into the best one, simply by stepping on the court. In the NBA, having a superstar at his peak usually means you don't have much to complain about. One elite talent can put a team right in the mix of championship contenders. When James had his one of the best defensive season in 2010, his Cleveland Cavaliers sprinted to the best record in the NBA. When Curry reached his apex in 2017, his Golden State Warriors won the first of 2 back-to-back championships. But while their own star player, a first-of-his-kind big man who can bludgeon opponents under the rim and sling no-look passes like Magic Johnson, is reaching new heights, the Nuggets have moved in the complete opposite direction. 2 seasons ago, they won the NBA championship. Last year, they earned the Western Conference 2nd seed. Now, they're on the play-in place, meaning that if the playoffs began today, they wouldn't be guaranteed a spot. One reason the Nuggets have dropped off is something Curry and James never had to deal with while they were rattling off their peak seasons. When the league agreed to a new collective bargaining agreement with the players in 2023, it introduced aprons of penalties for high-spending teams, like the Warriors, that surpassed certain salary thresholds. The goal was to create what League Commissioner Adam Silver called a parity of opportunity to compete for the championship. The most punitive of these penalties not only taxed team owners at higher rates, they also froze draft picks, prohibited certain kinds of trades, and essentially walled off the avenues general managers used to build each season's roster. For teams like the Nuggets, who had carefully assembled the team that won the championship, that has meant facing a difficult decision. Keep a title-winning team together at a prohibitive cost or let key players walk. The Nuggets have relied on Jokic at disturbing levels. What we've seen is a version of Jamal Murray that everyone should be concerned with, because the 17.8 points per game he's averaging is the lowest since his second year in the league. He is shooting only 33% from three and hasn't been nearly the reliable secondary offensive option he has been in previous seasons. And the Nuggets we've seen make up a group that has been disconnected on the floor. If Denver wants to get back to a championship level, the consistency certainly needs to get better. As always, this is a heated and competitive Western Conference. The good news is that Jokic is playing at a historic level. He leads the NBA in scoring, he's second in the league in assists, and he leads the league in rebounding. That's a great thing for his stats and his respective place in NBA history, but it's a bad thing the Nuggets rely on him this much. Jokic is playing 37.7 minutes per game. That's second in the league. Only Mikal Bridges sees more time. And Bridges doesn't have anywhere near the offensive responsibility that Jokic has. Jokic usage is 30.8%. That's seventh in the league among players who have played 15 games or more this season. His brilliance is masking a lot of the Nuggets' foundational flaws. But remember, the Nuggets gassed out in the second round of the playoffs last season against Minnesota. The younger Timberwolves raced by them in the second half of Game 7. Jokic hasn't had enough help this season. Murray hasn't been himself. Russell Westbrook has been terrific in spurts from a ball handling and playmaking perspective, but his days as an apex scorer are over. There's only so much he can do. Porter Jr. is one of the best shooting wings in basketball, but he can't put the ball on the floor and make plays for himself and others. So unless Murray gets back to 2023 level, Jokic is the only guy on Denver's roster who can consistently create a basketball advantage. Jokic represents the floor for the Nuggets, and as long as he's healthy and upright, that should always be a high floor. Murray represents the ceiling for the Nuggets, and because he's having a subpar season by his standards, the ceiling has been lower than usual. The Nuggets don't have enough bench depth. They shoot way too few three-pointers for this era of basketball. They have been average at best defensively. But in large part, the fate of this season rests upon Murray getting back to vintage Murray. For the Nuggets to be fine, a lot has to happen. They can take solace in the fact that a lot can happen. There are some games prove they are capable. But until the effort improves nightly, and until Murray begins to play better, the worst-case scenario is still at play. That these inconsistent Nuggets are the real Denver Nuggets.